I think it's a good topic to spend a little time just talking about the safety development process in general. It's a question that we get asked from a lot of customers who just aren't sure as to where to get started. So we brought our friend Chris Broglie here from Ross to spend a little time talking about that topic. Chris, thanks for coming.
Yes, sir. I'm glad to be here.
So Chris, why should companies follow a safety development process?
Well, a safety development process creates a systematic process that starts with a risk assessment and leads into something we call functional specification development, which defines how the system needs to operate and run in every mode of operation. That functional spec then leads to selection of mitigation devices or risk reduction devices, and then leads into the design and then ultimately installation and validation. And so your validation should always check that everything identified in the risk assessment has been properly reduced.
So why should a risk assessment be the starting point?
Well, if you don't do a true assessment, you may not identify all the potential risk. And an example from one of my customers, they saw a hazard, they went out, put a safeguard in place immediately without doing an assessment, just to come and find that that guard had been removed. A couple of days later, they asked the operator, why did you remove the guard? Well, I couldn't do my job. A risk assessment would have identified things like that.
So who should be involved besides just maybe the engineer or the safety person?
Well, the operator, because they're the ones that interact with the machine on a regular basis. Also, depending on the type of machine, if it's in a food and beverage plant, maybe it's the person that's doing cleaning of the machine. It might be material handling people. It might even be maintenance people that are doing troubleshooting and repairs. So you need to evaluate each mode of operation so that you can identify all the tasks associated with each mode with each person. That way you have identified all the risks, and then you can properly do risk reduction and implement solutions in an efficient way.
So what type of risks are assessed?
Well, most of the time, honestly, people will go out and look at normal operations when they do their risk assessment, and they'll ignore abnormal things like what happens when the machine jams, or what happens when I've got to do a changeover or cleaning. That's why we need to look at all modes of operation. And part of that is you should be looking at electrical, pneumatic, hydraulic, gravity. I mean, it's any source of potential energy you have to evaluate and look at during your risk assessment.
Why is a functional specification necessary?
Well, if you do the risk assessment right and you've used the right people, you know how the machine needs to operate for each mode of operation. That functional specification will determine how does it need to work during normal production to gain the most productivity out of the machine and make it safer. And then, you know, what needs to happen when you're in manual mode? What needs to happen when you're in teaching mode, for example? So each mode of operation should have a functional spec that defines what the safety needs are. That way it's designed into the system.
So why is a design verification best practice?
Well, what a lot of people have done is they have adopted standards like ISO 13849 or IEC 62061 out of Europe, or following, you know, ANSI B1119 or 26, which basically gives you the ability to go in and calculate what performance level or SIL level you're achieving before you ever buy the first component. It keeps you from wasting money, really.
The topic that never seems to really get discussed a lot is the validation of it. Why is a validation of their system necessary?
Well, the validation is the testing process that makes sure that what you identified in the risk assessment and what mitigation solution you selected actually works. And does it work in the right modes as designed? And so this whole thing about verification and validation is all about proving that it did what you intended it to do. And so that's all this is a documented process of testing.
Very good. Well, thank you very much, Chris, for the information.
Well, thank you.
I really appreciate it. Thanks for coming. To learn more about Ross Controls or Airline Hydraulics, please click on the link embedded in the video. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Bye.